Cerro Alegre is one of the many hills of Valparaiso, Pleasant Hill as they know it. Valparaiso has around 45 hills, and I say around because locals always think otherwise, even though the official number is 45. In Cerro Alegre, you can find houses such as Palacio Baburiza, which is the Museum of Fine Arts of Valparaiso. This house was built in 1916 and was acquired by Mr. Baburiza in 1925. After his death, the city took over the house since he had no descendants, and he had donated his property to the city, and they decided to make a lookout and name it Paseo Yugoslavo, or the Yugoslavian lookout point, in order to honor Mr. Pascual Baburiza. Paseo Yugoslavo does not only have this area, but it also contains an important house which belonged to a lady who assisted in the first open heart surgery in the country. Her house later became a restaurant called La Colombina, and it is one of the most beautiful houses in the many mazes and staircases of Valparaiso. Street art is something you can find all over Valparaiso. You can go to any of the hills from Esperanza to Playa Ancha and you will find graffiti and street art painted everywhere. The highest concentration of graffiti and street art can be found in the Cerros Alegre and Cerro Concepcion. And this is because since tourists always go through this area, they will take pictures of the art and they will be able to show them back home, meaning that the pieces that you paint in this area will pretty much travel the world. In the beginning, street art was used as political propaganda, and this was because street art has its origins in Russia around 1918 when they created a decree that would allow artists to paint in the streets. Mexican artists such as José Clemente Orozco, Diego Rivera, and David Alfaro Siqueiros decided to do the same and paint their artwork and their feelings on the streets of a very complicated Mexico during very hard times of turmoil. The latter, David Alfaro Siqueiros, upon failing to kill Trotsky in Mexico, he was jailed. And after he came out of jail, they invited him to come work in a city called Chillán in Chile. He was in Chillán, he painted a school called Escuela Mexico, and after that, he left his legacy in Chile. So Chile has a direct line of street art that comes from the Russians to the Mexicans right down to Chile. This is very important because styles developed here that would change the course of art for all of South America. One of these examples is the BRP, also known as La Brigada Ramona Parra. And La Brigada Ramona Parra started painting political campaigns for many people that wanted to be a part of the Communist Party in the late 60s. And eventually, Salvador Allende used a lot of their drawings as propaganda. After the coup d'etat of 1973, street art was outlawed and considered to be communist propaganda. So for many years, these artists went into the underground and could no longer paint openly and freely. They would normally have a guardia, or a guard, on each side of the wall they would paint. They had a rellenador who was in charge of filling in all the colors, sometimes more than one rellenador. And finally, a filetero, being the person who did the final black outline. The filete, or the black outline, was something that after Chile went back to democracy was very much respected by local graffiti artists who were now getting into art because of the heavy movement that was happening in New York and all over the world with graffiti and hip hop. In the beginning, most of the artists were also breakdancers and MCs and DJs. However, as time went by, some started to specialize in doing some amazing street art, always keeping in mind Chile's political history. So in many pieces that you will find in Chile, you will see that the local artists tend to use a thick black outline to stand out their works. Valparaiso is a city that was discovered in 1536 by Spanish conquistadores. Before that, indigenous tribes would fish out of Valparaiso and bring their crops into the city and lived a peaceful life. Around the time of the Incas, Valparaiso began to see a share of turmoil as they would collect taxes from the small tribes living on the coast. However, with the arrival of the Spanish, everything would change for its history. Forts were built in order to protect the bay, and little by little, they began to create what we now know as one of the most colorful cities of South America. As time went by, the British, German, and French influence began to rise for the small port. They created laws, trading routes, and other very important developments for the economic growth that would see this city go from a small port alongside the coast of Chile into becoming one of the most prosperous cities of all of Latin America. These immigrants left an important legacy of a time when Valparaiso's economy had flourished and people from all over the world wanted to visit this amazing place. The best moment for Valparaiso came around 1850, once the gold rush had become a world phenomenon. People from all over the world decided they needed to get to California, and to do so, they would take the Magellan Straits or Cape Horn to achieve that goal. For many years, passerbys left a little bit of their culture and created a legacy unlike any other in any part of the world. In the late 1870s, a war broke out between Chile and its neighboring countries, Peru and Bolivia. This changed the entire map of what we knew as Chile until that point, and we became that very long, very narrow country at the end of the world. Saltpeter became our main export, along with copper and other minerals that were necessary for the growth of other countries, specifically in Europe and North America. All was great for the Chilean economy up until a time that no person who lived in this city ever imagined would happen here. The opening of the Panama Canal changed the entire course of our history, as ships no longer needed to go through Cape Horn in order to get to California. Trade diminished in a vast amount, and parallel to this, everything that was going on around the world, such as World War I, played a major role in the downfall of the once great Valparaiso. With the departure of the British, German, French, Croatian, and other colonies that had once inhabited here, Valparaiso's residents were left to pick the city up from where it was and create something of it. Unfortunately, This was not an easy task, and as the years went by and political tension grew, Valparaiso hit its all-time low for the recession of 1976. 4 years later, they would bring in gantry cranes to replace all the manpower necessary for the port activity. And this played a major role in becoming one of the cities with the highest unemployment rates of all of Chile. However, none of this would be enough to stop the artists, the craftsmen, the historians, the musicians, and all of the dreamers who wanted to make of Valparaiso a World Heritage Site. For over 12 years, they continued to write UNESCO asking for a nomination to become one of these heritage locations. In 2003, UNESCO declares Valparaiso a World Heritage Site, and Valparaiso would now begin to appear in most travel blogs, travel books, and documentaries. Foreign investors began their return into Valparaiso. Those who had once made Valparaiso great were now coming back here and opening restaurants, hotels, bed and breakfast, and other business of the sort. Cerro Alegre and Cerro Concepcion became the main point for them, as it went from being a residential area to being one of the most commercial, historical districts of Chile. In the present day, Valparaiso does not fall behind any of the other tourist attractions you can find in South America. Valparaiso is a city where you can wander around, see its colors, enjoy of its art, listen to its music, and it could also make you understand why so many people love this amazing city. One of the many ways to get up to these cerros is taking funiculars. Funiculars began being built in 1883 in Cerro Concepcion, and the last one of the funiculars or elevators was Polanco in 1915.